Welcome to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Simone Anderson. She needs no introduction for most of you, as she's quite well known online, documenting her health journey and now as a content creator, brand owner, and mum. She chats with us about her relationship with Trent, how they met and got engaged, their whole love story. We chat through planning their wedding and having to postpone during COVID, how they did everything they wanted, had no regrets, and what they spent on their wedding. She gives some great advice about planning and enjoying the process. She got married at the hunting lodge in Auckland, and her photographer was Johnny Scott, who is very talented, and we'll share a few photos over on our Instagram at the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. So make sure you go and check that out, as well as the links for all the different vendors that they used, which will be in the show notes as well. Enjoy episode 11 with Simone. Hi, Simone. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So excited to chat all about your wedding. So to start off with, if you could just tell me a little bit about you and your partner, how you guys met, and your life together.
Okay. Trent and I have been together coming up, I'm pretty sure it's 9 years this year, 8 or 9 years. Oh my gosh, don't quote me. And we actually met on Tinder. It was one of those swipe right scenarios. And I just remember he really stood out because he super liked me. And then he was just so direct in his initial messaging. It was like, I don't use this that much. Can I grab your number so we can tee up a time? And I was like, I just love that. It was just so straightforward. There was no fluffing around. And so I gave him my number and then sort of just forgot about it. I'd actually deleted the app and I'd sort of got a little bit over it. And I got this text a couple of weeks later, a week later, and it was this guy who, he didn't actually even say his name, I don't think. It was like, oh, we chatted on Tinder. I'd love to take you out for a date. And I just remember thinking, I don't even know what this guy looks like. I don't know his age. I don't know anything about him, but yeah, why not? I said yes. And we organized like a Sunday evening to hang out. And that Sunday rolled around and he texted me and I was just freaked out. I was like, I just know nothing about him. I don't even, I don't have the app anymore. So I came up with an excuse. I said, look, I'm sick. And he was like, that's okay. Want to reschedule? And I'm just such a people pleaser. I was like, yeah, sure. Thinking like he'd just forget about it and I wouldn't need to worry about it again. The next week, same situation happened, date rolled round, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this again. But I could not bring myself to do it. I was like, he'll get the message this time and I don't need to go on the date. Anyway, came up with another excuse and I was like, that's done and dusted. And then he messaged me a third time and was like, look, I'd really love to take you out on this date. And I just remember thinking, man, this is persistence. Like, I'm just going to give it a go and see how it goes. And one of his messages was, look, like we were talking about the date and what we're going to do. He's like, look, I'm going to surprise you, pack a pair of socks and a banana. And I was like, okay, right. This is sounding very weird. And I went on this date and he picked me up and he was such a gentleman. I just remember little things like he opened the car door for me and we went and we did a temp and bowling date and we just had so much fun. There was one moment though where we were bowling and I was obviously really trying to impress him. And I rolled the ball down the bowling alley, but I missed the whole bowling alley. And I rolled it down the side of this alleyway thing. And there were like kids at the end and I was just mortified. And that's still one of my favorite memories from the date. Luckily, it didn't hit the kids. End of the day, went home. He dropped me off and I went back into the apartment. I was living with my best friend at the time. And she asked me about the date. How did it go? Like, what was the banana for? And I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. Like, obviously the socks, temp and bowling, get that. But the banana, I texted him. I was like, hey, what were the socks for? He was like, oh, just to throw you off track. I thought it would be funny. And I was like, I just love that. And it's still my favorite story from our first date and something that's just so memorable and really made him stand out because he didn't take himself seriously. It was just a bit of a laugh and a joke and we had heaps of fun. But straight away after that date, he messaged me and was like, look, I loved hanging out with you. I'd love to catch up and, see you again. And for me, that was like, it was so something I just hadn't experienced in the dating game. So many games and all of these bits and pieces, and I just loved that. So yeah, we went on a second date and a third date and a fourth date. I think that was 4 days in a row, and that was us done and dusted. It just felt so right, and it was so easy, and it was like hanging out with the best friends straight away. And yeah, we that's a little bit about us and how we met. I can't remember what the other question was, but if you ask me again, I can probably touch on it.
No, that's great. Yeah, just how you met, your kind of story. So, yeah, dated for a while, and then can you tell us a bit about the proposal and yeah, how all that went down?
Yeah, so I had been ready to marry this man from basically like get go. And I think I made that quite obvious. I wasn't afraid of talking about it, and we weren't afraid of talking about our future together. Trent's 5 years younger than me. And so he really needed to take his time in this process, and he didn't want to rush anything, and he was quite happy just enjoying the journey together. And I remember once sort of like bringing it up when we were sort of, I don't know, a few years down the track, and he was like, look, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in its own time. Like, just let it rest, and then it's going to be a beautiful surprise when it does happen. I just remember that being like okay, cool. I can just like enjoy this process now and enjoy that journey. And then we were heading to Queenstown for a trip that Trent had booked and planned. And I just had this like, it's going to happen on this trip. Like, I'm just so sure of it. And so I remember buying a white jumpsuit because I just wanted to wear white for the occasion. And then I also had this like red dress that was really sexy. And I thought maybe if we do a dinner date, maybe that could be the dress I wear. And then it was I think day 2, we went out for this beautiful dinner. It was at Millbrook, and it was like right on the little like duck pond there, and he'd organized it all. We had beautiful cars and everything. And I was like, he's going to do it here. Like it's going to happen. And we enjoyed dinner, and I was so nervous, and we ate, and then we like went home, and I was like, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe this is not going to happen. And then it was, I think maybe 2 days later, I remember he was like, we're going to go into town. I've organized a surprise. And I was like, okay, this has to be it. Like, this is it. And we went to a helicopter little spot in Queenstown, and we went up in the helicopter, and that whole ride, it was really awkward and weird. And I just could not. I was like, it's going to happen. And we stopped off on the top of one of the beautiful mountains there. We took some photos, and I was like, right, okay, come in. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. And I was waiting and waiting, and then still nothing. We got back into the helicopter, and I was like, what is this guy playing at? Because, it hasn't happened. Then I sort of like gave up, but he was like, we're going to head back, into town now. Like, how fun was that? I was like, that was awesome. So cool. But trying to hide my disappointment. And then we didn't stop off back home. We stopped off at this beautiful race course. And where we stopped off, we got into a golf cart and went for a little drive. And where we ended up stopping at the golf cart at was a little picnic that he'd set up. And we sat down there, and we were sitting and talking, and I was sort of eating, and he couldn't eat. And Trent loves his food. And I was like, okay, something's about to happen. And that's when he did a little spiel and told me how much he loved me, which was really gorgeous. I don't remember the exact words, but I just started crying straight away. And that's where he asked me. And it was super special. And then we actually got to enjoy the picnic afterwards and bubbles. And yeah.
Oh, so good. Such a beautiful story. He was definitely throwing you off with the helicopter up the mountain. You think you'd do it
No, I
there, but
was like, surely that is where it's going to happen. It's got to.
to have the element of surprise, I guess.
Exactly.
So then you got engaged, and then how did it go with starting to plan the wedding? Had you always had like a vision and style in mind with what you wanted? And yeah, how did that go with finding a venue, those kind of first steps?
Yeah, I think I'd always had this like dream and vision of what I thought my wedding day would be, and I knew it would be quite classic, and I wanted like elements that I just knew I'd never regret, that were quite timeless, and that was like my main key and point of difference. But I also knew that us as a couple, we're quite relaxed. We like a good time. We love a party. And that's what I wanted our wedding day to be. And that's what Trent wanted our wedding day to be. And so when we started the planning process together, I think one of my main things was just making sure that Trent sort of knew that this was his wedding day too, and that he could have input, where he wanted to have input. And I remember one of the first things we were sort of talking about, and we were chatting and chatting and chatting. He was like, yeah, I don't care. Like, you pick. And I was like, what do you mean you don't care? And he was like, I worded that wrong. I mean, I don't mind. Like, this is your day, and I want you to pick everything that makes you happy, because at the end of the day, I want this day to be like your dream day. He was like, you've dreamed of this day for your entire life, and I'm just here to help finance it and get the day going really. And I was like, okay, that sort of makes sense. And then along the way, I'd sort of like we'd sit down and we'd talk with our wedding planner, which we ended up getting a wedding planner, which was Astrid from PS I Love You events. And she was just amazing. And she just really helped facilitate the entire thing. And I think one of the first steps that she did with us was sit us down as a couple and we filled out separate questionnaires. And it was like really quirky, kind of like out the gate questions. I remember one of them was like, what's your favorite building? And so you popped in your favorite building. And it was like, this is then when we went to our next meeting where she sort of talked about a style she thought would suit us as a couple, taking our two styles together and combining them. And what we realized is that we both quite liked like the linear buildings and like quite straight lines, but we liked a little bit of glitz and glam, and the sort of concept started to come together. And I think that was quite cool because it was both of our tastes like combined in a really beautiful way. So she was definitely incredible in that. And I think she definitely took this vision I had and took it to another level. Like I don't think I could have, well, I know I couldn't have created this wedding day had it not been for her. And then filling out this questionnaire, obviously we're talking about these lines and this, like that sort of like there was a natural element to it as well. That's when she came up with a venue that she thought would suit, which she ended up suggesting the Hunting Lodge. And it was just perfect for us because it was still really casual winery setting. Like you could do it as glitzy or glam as you want, but you could choose to do it as casually as you want to. But it still had those really straight, beautiful lines of the barn. And then we sort of dressed up the front of it. And then there was that sort of natural nature part where you've got the vines and the beautiful olive trees and things like that. So that was sort of the first steps for us.
Beautiful. The Hunting Lodge is such a gorgeous venue, and yeah, like you say, it's got kind of all those different elements, but also sort of a blank canvas to make it your own as well. So yeah, really beautiful spot.
Definitely did love is like the inside of that barn, you can just do whatever you want with it. And then as well as outside, you can use as much of their furniture or as little as you choose to. And it's just a beautiful, easy space. And I think like at the time I had my two very elderly grandparents that were still with us, and we wanted to make sure like access for them was super easy, so you could just drive up. Just everything about the venue made sense for us, and it was still in Auckland, so easy for all our guests to get to.
And so what were your most important elements or priorities when it came to the day in terms of like vendors or dress, food? Yeah, what was most important to you?
The number one thing priority was that guests have the time of their life. So we just wanted that element of that real incredible party vibe and just a huge celebration. And with us, that was food and drink. So food and drink was just up there. And again, why the Hunting Lodge just made such perfect sense with they've got such a beautiful wine list, and then their food is just, it is so good. And we really liked the idea of quite a like casual dining situation where no one sat down, so we didn't do any like seated tables. And the reason we did this is just because that sums us up as a couple. Like we don't love the formal dining setting, we love just eating and mixing and mingling, and we're quite both extroverted people, so we just loved that idea of it just being super fun the entire time, not really many formalities at all. So we did is it walk and fork is what they call it. And we did that within our one request because we were like, we know they've got really good fried chicken out there, and then truffle fries. So as soon as we got married, that was what was being handed out in these little cones. So that was really fun. And then we had a beautiful seafood station as well, and we did a taco making station, and then just beautiful little nibbles handed around, and it was just super cash and cool. And at the end of the evening, the one thing, because I was like, we need something like that end of night soak up alcohol, we did the croque monsieur. So it was the ham and cheese toasted sandwich just done in the best way possible. And that was it was so good, so tasty.
And such a good late night snack. And I love that you just went with what is you don't have to stick to tradition or have this big sit down meal. You can just do whatever you want, and having that walk and fork different option is so nice.
I love that with like how weddings are sort of transforming over the years. Is there's a little bit less of that tradition. I mean, if people choose to, I think that's awesome, but you just get to do what you want. It's a day about celebrating your love and celebrating your love with your partner and your interests and your likes. And that's sort of how we tried to run with it, was just doing a wedding that suited us as a couple.
Absolutely. Love that. And can you tell us about your wedding outfits a bit and yeah, your dress, finding it or getting it made? How was that whole process?
Yeah, so I always knew that I had the style of dress that I just loved. And it was a beautiful, quite classic silhouette, but it was very heavily beaded. And then I'd seen over and over the same dress style done with this like overskirt that you could then take off and was detachable. So I loved that. I loved the two look sort of vibe. And I had the same dress, probably saved, well, not the exact same dress, but very similar style when I looked back over because I'd saved a wedding album for years, and just put things in that I really liked. And the same style of dress just appeared over and over and over. So I knew when I went to get my dress made that it just had to be like this in this dress. And I also knew it just had to be Trish Ping because I had just dreamed of one of her dresses for so many years. And I just love her as a person. I love her as a designer. And I've loved seeing her evolution in terms of her style and what she creates. And so that was just a no-brainer for me. And then this dress I sort of took to her in this different images, and she looked at them all. She was like, I love it. And we're going to pull that together and we're going to make it very you. And it was such an easy process. So yeah, that was my wedding outfit. And I knew I wanted the quite traditional, white, nothing too crazy. Just something that I look back on and still love in years to come. But that was sort of still me in a way. And I did really like that. I love the two dress options that this dress created. And it's quite a classic dress, but then also had a little bit of glitz and glam with the beads throughout it. And then for Trent, we just went with the simple tuxedo, super easy, again, classic. And seeing your man in a tuxedo is like, it is just dreamy. And
Always looks good.
there is something so sexy about it. And so that was just a no-brainer. And that's what we did for the groomsmen as well, was just really simple black tux. Not quite all the details that we did on Trent, so that he sort of stood out a little bit more, but not really. They still looked all very similar. And then for the girls, I'd always wanted white bridesmaid dresses, which at the time was quite controversial. I think it started to happen, but it wasn't like super popular at the time. And so people were quite shocked, especially my overseas followers were like, are they brides too? And they were all very confused. But I just really like the seamless of the black and white and how fresh it looked. And again, a color that I wasn't going to regret.
Yeah. And you had Pia Boutique Mac then, was that right? Oh,
Yes.
she's closed now.
No, it's so disappointing. He is a friend of mine, and her husband Johnny also shot the wedding, so that was really special having someone that was so close to us design the bridesmaid dresses, and she absolutely nailed it. I went into her with not even an image; I just talked to her about what I wanted, and it was quite a simple silk look dress with little straps, cowl neck on it, and something that would flatter because I got three very different shaped bridesmaids, something that would hopefully flatter all of them. So we did the waist detailing so it could all cinch in, and he had it looked amazing on all of them. So yeah, that was a really cool move.
Yeah, I've known Pia and Johnny for years as well. So nice to have them involved in your day. And they're yeah, both in the wedding photography world now, which is cool.
I know they just make it such a beautiful day. I don't know, they just add to the environment. They're not too in your face, but they're there and they give great direction. And I just love them both to bits.
Did you, being a little bit more in the public eye with a bit of a following, did you feel any pressure to, I don't know, live up to expectations or make your wedding look a certain way?
Definitely didn't because I I couldn't care less about that sort of thing. I mean, this day was about Trent and I, and it was about for us, our friends and family, and that was all that mattered. And I knew it was going to be beautiful and a beautiful day because I dreamt of a beautiful wedding day, but I definitely didn't feel like there was an outside pressure on that. I just knew that we had an idea of how we wanted this day to be, and that hopefully it would live up to that. So I feel quite thankful for that because otherwise that probably would have been quite stressful if you were trying to hit an expectation that wasn't your own.
Totally. Love that. It's so important. Just focus on the two of you and yeah, what the day is for. And it's about you, not impressing anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about your bridal party? How was the process choosing them and who was in it?
Yeah, choosing bridal party was pretty straightforward for me. I've got three beautiful, beautiful best friends, Becca, Jess, and Briar, and I just knew that those were the girls that I wanted to stand by my side. They've been through it thick and thin with me, and that, yeah, life's just better with them. So that was just super simple. I knew straight away, and I knew that they would say yes. So that was really fun. And then for Trent, he had three of his best friends as well. So it was quite easy and quite an easy decision for us. We didn't really have to, like, we would have had so many people if we could have, but we knew that we really wanted that 2-3 mark, and that just, financially makes sense as well. Nice number. To dress them all and do all the food and the drinks and the beforehand things. So yeah, that was quite straightforward. So he had, yeah, three of his great friends.
Nice. And how about guests? How many did you have? And was that quite a difficult process to narrow them down?
This was probably the hardest part of the wedding day for us, was the guest list. We both have insanely large families and insanely large friend circle groups that mean a lot to us. And we found this incredibly challenging. So even with trying to trim the numbers down, we ended up at 220. So that was us trying to scale back. We could have had a lot more there, and that was our hardest part, was actually cutting people who we really, really valued. We still would have loved at our wedding day, but we had to make a call somewhere. And that line just had to be drawn in the sand, and we just had to be okay in that decision. But we still definitely felt guilty about a few of the decisions that we had to make around that guest list. But at the end of the day, we just had to financially, and we couldn't see everyone there. So it just, yeah, we had to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, everyone says that's such a difficult process, one of the hardest things with weddings as well. But yeah, you have to be realistic and a bit ruthless sometimes. So can you tell us a bit about the big day, how it all went down, and yeah, any like highlights or favorite moments?
Absolutely. So the start of the wedding day, the night before, we both had separate accommodation. I stayed out sort of close by where the hunting lodge was. We found an Airbnb there, which was, I think, 10 minutes down the road. So just really easy. It had a lovely view, really like clean, nice home. So it would be nice for photos. And then Trent stayed, I think it was about 40 minutes away, and quite a quirky, cool accommodation that we'd found. And it was very much his vibe, and quite bachelor and quite masculine. And so that's where he wanted to stay. So we did that. And then we stayed in the separate groups with our bridal party the night before. And we sort of had a day of pampering the day before, and we got teeth whitened, and we had nice lunches and that sort of thing. And in the evening, we all met up as a bridal party group, and we did a pre-dinner at the hunting lodge, which was really cool, just part of their like casual dining sort of section there. And that's where we sort of said our final goodbyes, and we went away to the separate houses. And I just remember that night was just such a fun night with the girls. Tried to get an early night. We did a bit of pampering, ate some chocolate and had a glass of tea before bed, and then woke up in the morning, and it was just sort of like quite a relaxed morning, because we'd decided to do all the photos first, but also get married at that about 3 o'clock in the afternoon mark. So we really had heaps of time to get ready. So I think hair and makeup started at about 9 a.m. for us. And my mum came over in the morning. I gave the girls a little box of a few goodies and some earrings to wear on the day and that sort of thing. And then we made a nice breakfast, and we had bagels and a bottle of bubbles. I was actually pregnant at the time, so I was not having the bubbles. I was having fake bubbles, but the girls were having the bubbles, and they all knew. So that was one of the tricks on the day, actually, is that wedding planner suggested that we have a bottle of champagne that you put a bow around. That's like my bottle of champagne, but it's not actually champagne. So they poured it out and put other fake bubbles in there. So that's what I had all day, which was hilarious. But when the bar staff were actually walking this around and offering it to me and offering it to the bridesmaids, because they just thought it was bubbles, my bridesmaids were like, "Oh no, thank you, not that one." The bar staff was like, "Why?" And I was like, "Yes, please." So good. Anyway, we had our beautiful breakfast, and it was super casual. And then hair and makeup started, and that, I think, went through until about 1 o'clock, and it was just it was easy. The time went so quickly. There was no real stress. And I didn't even realize, but we're actually running a little bit late for the photos that we thought we were. But I hadn't even looked at a clock. And then, the cars turned up and we got in the cars. Oh, we did some pre-photos there. Johnny came and did some photos of us and the girls, and the same with the boys, but they got theirs done a little bit earlier. And then jumped into the cars, went to the hunting lodge where we did a first look. So this was something that I really, really wanted to do because I wanted to get the photos over and done with first. It was something super important to me because I wanted the minute our wedding started that we were there and present the whole time and that we didn't have to leave our party. I didn't want to leave our party. Like, this is the most expensive party of our entire life, and I didn't want to not miss a single second of it. So we, met at the hunting lodge, did a first look, which was just so special because that was just Trent and I, and it was just super emotional. I just remember we both cried, and it was just so amazing having that time to sort of connect first, and then also all my nerves just went away in that moment. Like, it was just like, oh, this is going to be such a cool day. I get to marry my best friend. Like, it's going to be amazing. I'm tearing up thinking about it, but it was, that was something I'm so glad we did. And then after that, we just all went off and did photos. We did bridal party photos, but we also did just our individual little photos. And I think we did photos for maybe 40 minutes, 50 minutes. So it was really quick, which was nice because it didn't drag on. And Johnny did heaps of those shots where it was just natural and we were walking, a couple of group ones and then a couple by the cars, and we were done. It was like, okay, cool. This is done. We're ready to go. And so from that point, we went into the hunting lodge. They've got a restaurant part there, and one of the rooms they'd sectioned off so that the guests couldn't see us, and we just sat in there. They'd done some beautiful platters up and some champagne, and we sat in there and talked, and Mum was in there, and then Trent's mum came to join for a little bit, which was really lovely as well. Trent obviously went back into the main wedding venue and waited there, and then all the guests sort of started arriving. And so we were just waiting for all the guests to pile in. And there was a little bit of a someone had said, and I think it was obviously one of those like grapevine whispers, that like grandma didn't get on the bus. So they were all waiting for grandma because the buses came out and obviously they wanted her to be there. But she'd been sitting in the audience the entire time. So we were 20 minutes late to walk down the aisle, not that it mattered, but because they were worried that grandma had gone missing. She wasn't. She was there. And, anyway, we came out and did the wedding thing and walked down the aisle and said yes, which was it was so special. That moment is something that I just remember for forever, just how you felt in that moment. And it was just so nice having all your favorite people witnessing that really, really special occasion. And then after we said I do, it was just straight into sort of celebrations, really. We, had the bubbles waiting for everyone and the food started. And then it just flew into the evening sort of festivities. And it was cool. We did first dance and cake cutting, speeches just sort of randomly throughout that time. So sort of tried to break them up a little bit so it wasn't all at once. And then it just turned into the, huge big dance floor. And that was it. And then it was, I think, 11:30 p.m. and all the buses started coming to collect guests and take them all back. And I think my favorite moment of the night was once people had started getting on the buses. Trent grabbed me, he was like, come with me. And he like walked me back round because the party had sort of gone on round in where the hunting lodge, inside the shed and on the outside veranda thing. But where we actually got married was in front of the barn. And he, walked me back round and we just sat down in the seats. So, looking up to where we got married, and we just talked about our day and like debriefed together and just had a little bit of time to connect as a couple. And it was just so special. And it was so nice having that moment of like, hey, we just did it. We did it. We're married. And that was definitely probably my highlight of the day, is just having that little bit of time to connect and, before we head home.
Oh, so nice. Sounds like it was such an amazing day. And I love that you made that moment just to be present and soak it in, and had all those special moments throughout the day. Did you did everyone know you were pregnant then, or did you announce it on the day? No.
Didn't announce. I think we were still in the early stages, so we wanted to be quiet, but we'd obviously let a few people know in that process, like our wedding planner knew because I just needed her to know. And then I talked to Trish about it because of the wedding dress. I was like, what if I get bigger and you can't, I was still luckily in the early stages, so you couldn't tell. And then friends and obviously some family we'd told quite a few people, but not the entire 200 wedding party. So no, I had to still act like I was drinking champagne during the day. And luckily, I was on such an emotional high. I felt like I'd had a couple of glasses of bubbles, despite the fact that I was completely sober. I think just because it was so enjoyable. But I do remember waking up the next day with this like pounding headache, and it felt like I had the worst hangover of my life. But it's because I drank so much of the sugary grapefruit sparkling juice that the sugar was like, "What have you done?" I was like, "Oh, it's not. I'm feeling terrible. I don't even have a hangover." I was like, "This isn't fair."
Oh, so good. And what did you find was like the hardest part about the whole wedding planning process? And is there anything you look back on and regret or would do differently?
So I like said, I truly think the hardest part for us was the guest list. That was like,
Mm.
as people who just love people, we wanted everyone there. We wanted this huge, amazing gathering. And I think trying to narrow that down was incredibly tough. And that was the only part of the day that we really struggled with, and that really sort of took an emotional toll on us as a couple. But once we came to terms with the fact that we set ourselves a limit and it was like, right, this is how many we're having, we sort of dealt with it, and it was like, okay, that's totally fine. In terms of, do we have any regrets of the day? I think we were in a very privileged position where we didn't set ourselves like a budget for our wedding day, and we knew that if we wanted to do this wedding, we wanted to do it once and we wanted to do it right. And that meant that we really did everything. Like if we were tossing up between something and we're like, should we do this or should we do that? We're like, nah, let's do it this way. Like we're going to do it the full way, and then we won't have a regret. And there's not a single thing about our wedding day that I regret or that went wrong or wasn't just exactly as we wanted it, because we're in that position where we could pick exactly what we wanted. And that, yeah, I felt really thankful for that. And I'm glad we didn't try and like save money here and there just to, I don't know, try and bring the cost down a bit, because hopefully we only get married once and it was just everything that we ever wanted. And we were in a position where we had purchased our first home. We didn't have kids yet, so we had that money there. And yeah, we were able to actually invest in those little areas that we, potentially may not have been in another situation. So no, very, very grateful. No regrets from our day, which is nice.
Love that. That was going to be my next question about budget as well, and if you had one or blew it. And yeah, do you, if you're happy to talk about a ballpark figure or just what that looked like, did you have like family helping you, or you just decided to do whatever you wanted?
Budget for us, we didn't set a budget. We just thought we'll sort of go and see how we go, and we tried to pay as we went as well. We didn't have any family help from either side, and there's nothing wrong with that. Our families just weren't in the position to help out, and we didn't actually expect them to either. We sort of viewed this as this was our wedding day. We're choosing to get married. We're choosing to do it this way, and we sort of expect to pay for it because of that. And we're quite happy with that. And we'd started saving quite a bit in advance, and we knew that we were working towards this. And we sort of had a goal that we were wanting to get towards, of what we thought we'd spend. And we went quite a bit over, to be honest. I think once you start adding up, you're like, oh, okay, 1,000 here, 1,000 here, 1,000 here. And like, how does it get to that number? I've actually never shared people are very, very interested in what we've shared. I've never actually shared what we spent, but it is a very, very large amount. I think it's been so long now, I don't mind saying, but we actually spent just over $150,000. So huge, huge figure. I do realize this. This was our honeymoon. This was rings. This was dress. This was everything.
Big amount of guests as well.
Huge
Yeah.
amount. So enormous amount of money, and I know that. But again, it wasn't taking away from sort of, I don't know, we'd got into our house and we'd done things that were important to us in that aspect too. And we were like, we can do this. So why not? Let's do the day that we'll never regret.
Yeah, nice. And how long were you engaged for? Was that quite a long planning
Well, we
process?
planned on a year from engagement to wedding, and we were right in the middle of COVID. So our initial wedding day is not actually the date we got married, because 2 weeks before our initial wedding date, there was sort of talks of COVID. And I just remember someone going, oh, you're going to postpone your wedding. And I was thinking, what for? They're like, COVID. I was like, oh, whatever. Like, that's not going to be a thing. It'll be fine. And then this talk started getting more and more. And we were a week and a half out and we had to lock in the florals and the food. So they both had to order for those so that they could have them. We were getting lots of Colombian roses and things like that. And so our florist, which was P.S. I Love You florist, she was, I've got to place the order. And if we place the order, our entire floral budget, which was like a huge part of our wedding budget, was florals. This is something that was really important to me on the day as well, was flowers. And if we placed that order and they arrived and we couldn't go ahead, we'd lose all that money and we'd have all these flowers we didn't know what to do with. So we had to make a call. I think it was, a week and a half out maybe. And we both just said, we can't risk that. We'll put it on pause and we'll see what happened. Anyway, a few days later, it was announced that we're going into lockdown, and we were just so thankful. It was like, thank that, like we don't actually have to change anything. It was like, okay, phew. And then it was sort of this weird waiting game in that time too, because you just didn't know what was going to happen. So we couldn't rebook in a wedding date. We couldn't make any plans. And luckily, all our vendors that we were sort of chatting to, they were all just as lost as we were, because it was just the starting process. So they were like, look, we'll just see what happens and we'll just chat when we know more. And then we just started slowly chatting as we found out more. And we booked in a date for the end of the year, which was November, which was still right in the middle of all, going in and out of lockdown craziness. But we just happened to that date was like right in a point where there was no mask mandate. So you didn't need to wear mask at this time in the setting, and that you were sort of free to do it. So we got what would be a completely normal wedding date right in the middle of crazy COVID times. It was just meant to be. I don't know how we managed it, but I'm just thankful. And so, it ended up being a year and a half, or just over a year and a half engagement by the end of it, thanks to COVID.
Such a tough couple of years for weddings. People planning and vendors and everything. It was just.
I just so felt for the vendors, going through that and what they were dealing with. It was like, at the end of the day, this is our one wedding day. It's just us. But I felt for them, whose entire business and world and families relied on this industry, and they just couldn't do anything. They didn't know what to do. And so when people are like, you worried about it? It's like, no, not really. Like, it'll happen when it happens. And we actually tossed up for a while. They're just doing the, what was it? Not court. Where you go and just
like
sign
a elopement, registry wedding.
Yeah, because we're like, should we just do that? And then we're like, nah, we do actually want the big day. So we just waited. We were patient in the end.
And did you guys go on honeymoon straight away? I don't know if you were allowed to travel then, but what did planning that look like?
Yeah, we sort of were a bit worried about like international travel, but we'd always talked about just doing a little Queenstown trip anyway, because that's where we got engaged. That's where we have gone on about 10 trips as a couple. We just love it down there. It's super relaxed. There's so many amazing things to do. Lots of beautiful wineries. Not that that was really that helpful. I remember going around a few wineries just with Trent. I was like watching him do wine tasting. I was like, I'd say this is the time of my life, babe. This is what we'll do one day of this for you. But the rest of it, we just had a really lovely time and enjoyed the beautiful scenery down there. And I think, we only maybe did 5 days, and that's sort of what we did for it, and called it a honeymoon. It was just super relaxed. There was nothing too fancy about it.
So good. And for the wedding planning process, was there any like helpful websites or resources that helped you? I mean, obviously Astrid had a big part to play and would be super helpful having a wedding planner. But was there anything else in terms of like finding vendors, or was it Instagram? Yeah.
Say in terms of vendors, definitely Instagram. I think I just had already seen beautiful weddings that I, absolutely admired, and admired the style and the taste that they had already done. So I'd saved quite a few vendors that I loved anyway. And then in terms of like the wedding planning book that I just loved was the Little White Book by a friend of mine who runs Forever Journals. And it's just, what I loved about it was a place to put everything down. It details out like as you're leading up, like the months and what you should be planning and things to think about. And it's just this beautiful book that I've now got as like a treasured memory of like all of those little things, and lots of little things that you forgot, or that you don't remember even thinking about along the way, and you just write it all out. And I really liked that. That was all in one spot, and just a special keepsake from the day, because I'm not a huge sentimental person. I don't keep a lot of that sort of thing, but this was a nice book that I can keep all in one place that just, reminds me of the day. That was pretty special for me. And then Astrid, just a wedding planner. I honestly don't know how I would have done it without her. I wouldn't have. So she was a lifesaver.
Is it forget me not journals? Is it Meg you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, that little white book's amazing. I've sent that to a bunch of my clients as well.
Have you? I love it.
Do you have any advice that you would give couples that are planning their wedding at the moment?
I think my biggest piece or our biggest piece of advice to any friends that are getting married is just to do the day that you want. You are going to get so many different pieces of advice. You're going to get advice from family members and from parents and from friends, and they're all trying to do their best and trying to give you great suggestions. At the end of the day, it's you two, and you two are there's no one else like you two in the world. And like you want the day to be about you and you as a couple, and it doesn't need to be super generic like every other wedding day that you've ever seen online. Like you can take parts that you love and you can do traditional parts and non-traditional parts and just make it about you. And if that is, super formal or super casual, it just doesn't matter. You want the day to be something that people remember as, oh, that was Simone and Trent's wedding day, not just like, oh, that was another wedding that we attended, and something that was a little bit different and had its quirks to it, which I love.
Great advice. I love that. Do you feel like you had the wedding and the honeymoon and everything, and then I guess you were straight into kind of baby was the next step? But yeah, do you feel like you got any post-wedding blues afterwards?
So definitely people talk about this and I didn't have a single second of blue, but I think because it was everything that I could ever imagine. And it was my dream day. I got to marry my best friend. And it was a pinnacle moment, but wouldn't want to do it again, if that makes sense. Like it was everything. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to redo it. It's this memory I'll have forever now. And it was so special. And I probably knowing I was pregnant had a big part of it was the next stage and there was the next focus. And yeah, I don't know. It was, we're starting on that new leg and journey of our life. So I definitely didn't have any blues. It was just, I love reliving the day. I love re-watching our video and photos and things like that. But no, definitely no wedding blues. It was just, in a little bit, in one sense, it was like, oh, that's over. Like we can start spending our money on something else other than wedding savings, So it was like, oh, that's quite nice. We've freed up some cash again to then spend on babies.
Oh, so good. And what is married life like now? You've been married for a little while now. So, yeah, is there any advice, marriage advice that you have from your few years of marriage?
Yeah, so for us, we're coming up 3 years marriage, which I don't know if I'm able to give out marriage advice yet. I feel like I might need to be further down the track before I can dish that out. But for me, getting married, sort of people, you hear both sides where you're like, oh, changes everything, or it's exactly the same. And I feel like it's a mixture of both. Like our relationship is fundamentally exactly the same. He's exactly the same human, and our love is just like as amazing as it was. But there's also this depth of there's something about being married and having that commitment to someone else is like a whole nother level. Like I have never loved him more. It's a whole nother step, and I feel just so committed to this person, and our life is just joint now. And I think there's something really, really special about that. And everything you do is now a joint decision, and you're worried about your joint future together rather than it being two, people in this like relationship, we're going alongside each other. I think for us, it was a whole nother level of special. And I just remember I just looked at him and I was like, "You're my husband. Like this is pretty cool." And wearing the rings and all of that side of things was just amazing for us. But yeah, it doesn't change the relationship as such, but it's just how you feel is a whole nother level of committed. Well, it did for us. And yeah, advice. I just think like any good relationship, just be open with communication, and we just talk about everything. We're not always on the same page about things, but what we have decided is that we're just going to communicate. If we ever have anything that arises where we're not aligned, we're just going to talk and talk and talk until we can come to a solution or a middle ground. And I think we just give each other respect in that part of things where I value him as a person. He values me as a person. We just try and treat each other with kindness and with love. And yeah, we're on this journey together. And that's it, really. I think should try and be kind and patient with one another, because life and marriage is not always going to be rosy. There's going to be tough shit that you go through. And I think if you found that best friend and that person that you can deal with those things with and those challenges with, it just makes life better.
And that's such great advice. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else you'd like to add as we wrap up or say to engaged people?
Just enjoy the process. And I know that's probably easier said than done, but I loved the process of being engaged, and I loved the process of planning the wedding and actually getting through that wedding day. And I think if you can try and not focus on all the little things or the things that could go wrong, or, like all the minor details, it is such a special stage in your life, and it's something to be cherished. And I think you're going to look back on that time and just hope that you weren't stressed or worried through the entire process. And I always just, I say to people, try and let that go a little bit and ask for help where you need help and rely on friends and things like that, because it's such, I don't know, I loved it as a stage of life. And I think it can be such a beautiful stage of life if you let go of the fear and worry.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the pod today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. I hope I said something of value, but not just all great.